Alex Whitney stood by the panoramic window in his father's office on the 42nd floor of the Whitney Hotels and Resorts headquarters in Boston. His reflection in the glass looked tired, the dark circles under his eyes betraying a sleepless night. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Michael Whitney's voice sounded weaker than usual. The heart attack he had a month ago had significantly undermined his strength. Alex turned to his father, who was sitting in his leather chair. The once powerful man now looked smaller, more vulnerable. "Yes, Dad. I need to know the truth." Michael sighed heavily. "Son, you are about to inherit a $3 billion company. Of course, there will be people who will try to take advantage of it. That's why I want to do this." Alex sat down on the edge of the table. "I need to know who's real and who's just pretending to be a friend for money. And how long do you plan to play the role of a poor student?" 6 months. That should be enough." Michael shook his head. "You know, your mother always said that real friends can be counted on the fingers of one hand." At the mention of his mother, Alex felt a familiar pain in his chest. 10 years had passed, and the wound had not yet healed. "I remember," he said quietly. "That's why I have to find them." The office fell silent. Outside the window, the city was noisy, but up here, it seemed like they were cut off from the rest of the world. "What will you tell Robert?" my father asked about his deputy. "He's known you since childhood. Only you, me, and our lawyers will know the truth. For everyone else, I went to Europe for 6 months." Alex walked over to a small safe in the wall, opened it, and put his Patek Philippe watch, credit cards, and Porsche keys inside. "I rented an apartment in Dorchester," he continued. "It's not the best neighborhood, but it's exactly what my legend needs. I got a job as a bartender at the Old Harbor pub." Michael got up from his chair and walked over to his son. "You do realize that you're going to learn things that might disappoint you, right?" Alex remembered the party last week, how Matthew Parker, his best friend since college, had told everyone about their inseparable friendship, how Rebecca Thompson, whom he had dated 6 months ago, had hinted at a possible renewal of their relationship. "Better a bitter truth than a sweet lie," he replied. "Okay." Michael put his hand on his son's shoulder. "Just be careful. People can be unpredictable when it comes to money." Alex hugged his father. "Don't worry, I'll be careful." The next morning, Alex stood in front of the mirror in his new apartment. Instead of a Tom Ford suit, he was wearing worn jeans and a simple H&M t-shirt. Instead of a $100,000 watch, he wore a cheap $30 Timex. His phone vibrated. A message from Matthew. "Where have you been? I heard you're going to Europe?" Alex looked at the screen for a long time before answering. "Change of plans. I'm staying in Boston. Let's meet tonight at the Old Harbor pub. I work there now." The answer came almost instantly. "Working? Are you kidding?" "No, it's a long story. I'll tell you when we meet." Alex put down the phone and took a deep breath. The experiment was about to begin. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. It was his new neighbor, Peter Burke, a simple guy who worked as a car mechanic. "Hello, neighbor." Peter smiled broadly. "How are you settling in?" "Little by little," Alex answered, trying to speak simply without the usual sophistication. "There's still a lot of work to be done. Listen, the guys and I are going to watch the game tonight. Would you like to join us?" Alex hesitated. He used to watch sports only from the VIP box. "Thanks, but I'm working at the bar tonight." "Oh, you're the new bartender at the Harbor?" Peter whistled. "Cool job. Some other time then." After Peter left, Alex sat down on the worn couch. Everything seemed so real. For the first time in a long time, he felt like a human being, not an heir to an empire. In the evening, wearing a bartender's apron, he prepared to meet Matthew. How will his best friend react to the news that Alex Whitney is now just a bartender? Will he remain the same loyal friend? He will get the answer to this question very soon. Chapter 2. Meeting a new circle of friends. The Old Harbor pub was buzzing with the Friday night crowd. Alex was just wiping down glasses at the bar when the doors opened, letting in a gust of cold wind and Matthew Parker. In his impeccable Armani suit, he looked like a diamond among the pebbles. The bar patrons, dressed in jeans and simple t-shirts, involuntarily turned in his direction. Matthew stopped in the middle of the room, his eyes widening in surprise when he saw Alex behind the bar. Slowly, as if afraid of getting his designer shoes dirty, he walked over to the bar. "Oh my God, are you serious?" His voice was full of disbelief. "Is this some kind of social experiment?" Alex felt his heart beat rapidly. This was the first test. "Have a seat," he nodded toward an empty chair. "I'll explain everything in a moment. Tommy," he called out to the other bartender, a burly man with tattoos on his arms. "Can I take a break?" 15 minutes, new guy," he replied without even turning around. "And don't forget to wipe the tables in the far corner." They sat down at a table away from the other patrons. Matthew pushed the menu away squeamishly as if he was afraid of getting dirty. "Okay, tell me." He folded his hands on the table. "What happened to Europe? And why did you—" He looked around the room. "Here." Alex took a deep breath. The story he had prepared had to sound plausible. "My father froze my accounts. He says I need to learn the value of money before I can get access to the company." "What?" Matthew leaned back in his chair. "Old Whitney was always tough, but this is too much. He says I'll never understand the value of $1 unless I work for it." "So he's frozen everything?" Matthew's voice sounded worried. "Everything except my rent and basic needs. He says I have to earn my own living." Wait. Matthew stepped forward. "What about your Porsche, the apartment in the back bay, all your—" He looked around and lowered his voice. "Investments?" "I sold the car. I rented out the apartment." Alex tried to speak calmly, watching his friend's reaction. "I live in Dorchester now." "In Dorchester?" Matthew grimaced as if he had eaten something sour. "You're kidding, right? That neighborhood isn't even considered part of civilized Boston." At that moment, the bar door opened again, and Rebecca Thompson entered the establishment, accompanied by 2 friends. She was wearing a designer dress that cost more than a bartender's monthly salary. Her eyes widened when she saw Alex in the apron. "Alex?" She walked over to their table, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. "What are you doing here?" "Working," he answered simply, watching her reaction. Rebecca exchanged glances with her friends. Their eyes were a mixture of surprise and pity. "But why?" She sat down at their table, cautiously, as if afraid of getting her dress dirty. "It's a long story," Matthew interjected, clearly enjoying his role as informant. "Old Whitney decided to teach our golden boy a lesson. He froze all the accounts. One of Rebecca's friends, Victoria, who had always flirted with Alex at parties before, now looked at him with undisguised disappointment. "Oh my God, Alex, I'm so sorry." Rebecca put her manicured hand on his forearm. "How long will it take?" "I don't know. Maybe 6 months." 6 months? Matthew shook his head. "You won't last a month here. Listen, I can lend you some money." He pulled his wallet out of his pocket. "No, thanks," Alex interrupted him. "I want to try it myself." "Don't be silly," Matthew insisted. "You're not cut out for this." He gestured around the bar again. "New guy," Tommy called out. "Your break is over. We've got a beer spill on table 3. "Gotta go." Alex stood up. As he returned to the bar, he watched his friends whispering out of the corner of his eye, casting sympathetic glances at him. After a few minutes, they left without even ordering a drink. The next week, his phone was bursting with messages. The news of his fall spread like wildfire among Boston's elite. "I can't believe your father is doing this to you. If you need anything, just say the word," wrote Lisa Morris, a girl he had met several times at social events and who always tried to get his attention. "Man, this is crazy. Can I talk to your dad? My dad might be able to influence him," suggested Kevin Adams, the son of his father's business partner. Alex responded to everyone the same way, briefly thanking them and refusing to help. A week passed and the picture began to clear. Matthew, who used to invite him to all the parties, now responded less and less. His "busy man, maybe next time" became a familiar excuse. Rebecca, who had recently hinted at a renewed relationship, was now too busy preparing for an important presentation. Only two people remained close. His university buddy Mike Donovan, who had worked as a waiter himself during his studies, and Emma Carter, a quiet girl from their former company who had always kept to herself. One night when the bar was already empty, Mike was sitting at the bar watching Alex wipe down glasses. "You know," he said, stirring his Coke, "I went through something similar, not as dramatic, of course, but when my parents lost their business." He paused. "It turned out that most of my friends back then were friends with my wallet, not me." Alex put down the towel. "How did you cope with that?" "I found real friends," Mike shrugged. "The kind who don't care how much money you have in your bank account." At that moment, Emma walked into the bar, looking tired after working in her small art gallery. "Hey guys," she sat down next to Mike. "Alex, how are you holding up?" "Fine." He poured her favorite tea. "I'm learning how to make cocktails, wipe down tables. You know, the usual stuff." "You've changed," Emma suddenly said, looking at him carefully. "In a good way. You seem more real." Alex froze. That was the word. Real. For the first time in a long time, he was not playing the role of a successful heir, not trying to meet someone's expectations. "By the way," Mike added, "the guys and I are going to play basketball this weekend. It's nothing special, just a friendly game in the park. Do you want to come along?" Alex used to play tennis on private courts and golf at private clubs. Basketball in a public park seemed like something real. "I'd love to," he said, "but I'm not very good at it." "That's okay. We'll teach you," Mike smiled. "The main thing is desire." That evening, on the way back to his apartment in Dorchester, Alex thought about how quickly life was changing. Just 2 weeks ago, they were all sitting at the same table in the most expensive restaurant in the city, laughing and planning their future. Matthew was talking about their eternal friendship, and Rebecca was talking about the special bond between them. And now, his phone vibrated. A message from his father. "How are you, son? Everything going according to plan?" Alex looked at the screen for a long time before answering. "Everything is going exactly as we expected. The truth has come out, frankly." He went up the stairs to his floor and met Peter, who was fixing his old Ford in the parking lot. "Hi, neighbor," Peter called out, wiping his hands on a rag. "How's work going?" "Fine," Alex replied, coming closer. "Listen, do you need help with your car?" Peter raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Do you know anything about cars?" "No," Alex answered honestly. "But I want to learn. You know, a useful skill." Peter smiled broadly. "Well then, let's start with the basics. Lesson 1. How not to kill yourself changing the oil. And believe me, it's harder than it looks." They spent the next 2 hours leaning over the engine. Peter patiently explained the purpose of each part, and Alex eagerly absorbed the new knowledge. His expensive designer jeans were now covered in oil, but for the first time in a long time he didn't care. Late at night, lying on his simple bed, he looked up at the ceiling and thought that this experiment could teach him more than just how to recognize fake friends. Perhaps he would finally realize who he was without his last name and bank account. Meanwhile, in an expensive downtown penthouse, Matthew Parker was typing a message. "You won't believe what happened to Alex Whitney." A month passed. Alex stood at the bar of the Old Harbor pub, watching the raindrops trickle down the windows. His hands automatically wiped his glasses. a motion that had become as familiar as tying a tie. "Hey, new guy," Tommy called out. "There's a dandy over there looking for you." Alex turned around and saw Kevin Adams shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot at the entrance. His Brooks Brothers suit looked out of place among the work clothes of the regular visitors. "Alex, can we talk?" Kevin looked around nervously. "In private?" They went out to the bar's backyard. The rain had stopped, but the air was still humid. "Listen," Kevin began, pulling out a pack of cigarettes. "I heard that your old man is planning to take over the hotel chain in the near future." Alex tensed. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter," Kevin waved his hand. "What matters is this. I know you're not in the best situation right now, and I could help." "Help?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "Yeah." Kevin took a drag. "Look, my dad's got a lot of influence on the board of directors. If you know, put in a good word for me when you get back to management." "What do you want in return?" "Oh, nothing much," Kevin smiled. "Just a seat on the board of directors. You know I've always wanted to work in big business." Alex felt his insides boiling. "What about your offer to help me a month ago? Was that for a reason?" Kevin hesitated. "Well, business is business. It's nothing personal." "Of course," Alex replied coldly. "Sorry, my break is over." When he returned to the bar, he saw Emma sitting at the counter. "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing his tense look. "Yeah, it's just—" He stopped. "I never thought people could be so calculating," she suggested. "Money hungry?" "Exactly." At that moment, the bar door opened and a group of people entered. Alex recognized Matthew and Rebecca among them. "Oh, look who's here," Matthew announced loudly. His cheeks were red with alcohol. "Our little bartender." Rebecca giggled. "Matthew, don't be like that." "What? Honest?" He walked over to the bar. "Look, Alex, I understand. Your father wants to teach you a lesson, but you do realize that this is ridiculous, right?" Alex stared at his former best friend in silence. "Can I get you something?" he asked calmly. "Oh, come on," Matthew waved his hand. "We're friends. I just want to help. I could talk to your father." "What do you want to help for, Matthew?" Emma suddenly interjected. "For access to his connections?" Matthew looked at her in surprise. "The same girl you ignored at all the parties," she replied calmly. "Because I wasn't useful enough for you." The bar fell silent. Even the music seemed muffled. "You know what?" Matthew turned to Alex. "Stay here in your bar. Maybe this is your level." He turned around and left, taking the entire company with him. Rebecca gave Alex one last look, a mixture of pity and arrogance. "Thank you," Alex said quietly to Emma. "You're welcome," she smiled. Sometimes losing fake friends is the best thing that can happen." Later that night, while cleaning the bar after closing, Alex received a message from Mike. "I heard about the incident today. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he replied. "Just discovering new sides of people." "It always hurts," Mike wrote, "but it's necessary." The next day, Alex sat in his apartment looking through old photos. Here he and Matthew are on a yacht in Monaco. Here is Rebecca hugging him at a charity ball. Kevin raises a glass to their eternal friendship. His phone vibrates. A message from his father. "How are you, son?" Alex looked at the screen for a long time before answering. Dad, you were right. Sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what you really have." He walked over to the window. His apartment overlooked a working-class neighborhood in Boston, not the prettiest of landscapes, but an honest one, just like the people who live here. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. It was Peter. "Hey, neighbor, we're going to watch the match at my place. Do you want to join us?" Alex smiled. "Of course. I'll just buy a beer." "I have some." Peter waved his hand. "Just come over." Watching his neighbor go down the stairs, Alex thought about the irony of life. He started this experiment to find real friends among the rich and successful, but he finds them among ordinary people who don't even know about his real life. Perhaps this is the most important lesson. Alex looked at his phone screen, where his bank balance was displayed. $234 was all he had left until his next paycheck, and the tuition fee for the bartending course he had started taking to improve his skills was $500. "Is something wrong?" Emma asked, noticing his worried look. They were sitting in a small coffee shop not far from the bar. "No, nothing's wrong," he tried to smile. "I'm just counting every dollar for the first time in my life." Emma put down her cup of coffee. "You know, there's no shame in asking for help." Alex thought about it. Over the past month, his friends had almost completely disappeared from his life. Only Emma, Mike, and a few new acquaintances from the bar remained. But he knew that Emma was struggling to make ends meet with her small gallery, and Mike was working 2 jobs to pay for his sister's education. "You know what?" he suddenly said. "I'm going to try to borrow from Richard. He always said I could count on him." Richard Blake had been his friend since private school. Their families had been friends for years, and Richard had always boasted that money was no object for true friends. That evening, Alex wrote him a message. "Hi, Richard, can we meet? I need your advice." The answer came almost instantly. "Sure, man. Tomorrow at Le Petit Bistro at 1 p.m. Le Petit Bistro was one of the most expensive restaurants in Boston. Alex smiled. "Some things don't change." "I'm sorry, but I can't afford such places now," he replied. "Maybe just a coffee at Starbucks." The pause before the next message was longer. "Oh, right, I forgot about your situation. Okay, let's go to the Starbucks on Boylston Street." The next day, Richard showed up 20 minutes late, dressed in a suit that cost more than 6 months' bartending salary. "Sorry I'm late," he waved his hand casually. "An important meeting ran late. You know, business." Alex nodded. He had said the same thing before. "Listen, Richard," he began when they sat down at the table. "I need help. I want to take a bartending course to improve my skills, but I don't have enough money." Richard sipped his coffee. "How much do you need?" $500. I'll pay you back in a month, 2 at the most." Richard leaned back in his chair. $500? He laughed. "Alex, you used to leave that much for tips." "Times have changed," Alex replied calmly. "So, what do you think?" "Look," Richard leaned forward. "I'd love to help, but—" He paused. "You see, now is not the best time. I have a big investment in a new project and every dollar counts." Alex remembered how a month ago Richard had bragged about his new $200,000 Bentley. "But you know what?" Richard continued. "I can offer you something better. Talk to your father. Tell him that you've figured it out, that you've learned the value of money. He just wants to hear that, doesn't he?" "That's not the point," Alex replied. "I just wanted to borrow a small amount from a friend." Richard looked at his watch. "I'm sorry, but I have to go. I have an important meeting with investors. Listen," he stood up. "If you change your mind about talking to your father, let me know. I could put in a good word for you." After Richard left, Alex sat for a long time staring at his cold coffee. He remembered how many times Richard had spoken about their strong friendship, about how money would never come between them. The bar was quiet that evening. Alex was wiping down the bar when he heard a familiar voice. "Rough day?" It was Mike. He often came by after his shift at the restaurant. "Yeah," Alex replied. "You know, I realized something important today. When you're rich, everyone around you talks about how money doesn't matter. But once you lose it, it suddenly turns out that money is the only thing that matters to all these people." Mike nodded. "I know the story. Listen, what kind of courses did you want to take?" Alex told me about a bartending training program. $500? Mike pulled out his wallet. "I have 300. I can lend it to you." No, Alex shook his head. "You need the money yourself. Hey, Mike put the money on the counter. When I first started working in a restaurant, a nice man lent me money for waiter training. He told me to pay him back when I could. Now it's my turn to help someone else. Alex looked at the money on the counter. $300 was a significant amount for Mike. I'll pay you back in a month, he said. I promise. No problem, Mike smiled. That's what friends are for, right? That night, on the way home, Alex thought about the irony of life. The man who had always talked about the importance of friendship had refused him $500, and the one who barely makes ends meet himself did not hesitate to offer $300. His phone vibrated. A message from Richard. Think again about talking to your father. I might be able to help resolve the situation, under certain conditions. Alex deleted the message without replying. Some life lessons are more valuable than money. An autumn evening was casting a golden haze over Boston. Alex finished his shift at the bar earlier than usual. Tonight was a special occasion. Emma had invited him and Mike to dinner at her small apartment in Cambridge. Nothing fancy, she said. Just a home-cooked dinner. As Alex walked up the stairs to her apartment, he remembered the lavish parties he used to throw in his penthouse. Back then, the tables were overflowing with delicacies and the champagne was flowing. But for some reason, those evenings seemed empty and meaningless now. Emma opened the door and the smell of homemade lasagna immediately filled the hallway. Come in, she smiled. Mike is already here, helping with the salad. The apartment was small but cozy. There were paintings everywhere, works by young artists from her gallery. Brushes were drying on the windowsill. Emma liked to paint in her spare time. God, it smells so good. Alex took off his jacket. I haven't eaten home-cooked food in a long time. It's my grandmother's recipe, Emma replied. She always said the best conversations happen over a home-cooked meal. Mike came out of the kitchen holding a salad bowl. Hey, buddy, how was your shift? It was okay. Alex went into the kitchen. There was an interesting situation today. He told me about an elderly couple who came into the bar. They were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary and were telling stories about how they met in this very bar in the 70s. Can you imagine? He finished his story. 40 years together, and it all started with a chance meeting in a bar. Sometimes the most important moments of our lives begin in the most unexpected places, Emma said thoughtfully, taking the lasagna out of the oven. They sat down at the small kitchen table. Candles created a warm, cozy atmosphere. You know, Mike began as he tossed the salad, I've been meaning to say this for a long time. Alex, you've changed a lot over the months. Alex put down his fork. What do you mean? Well, Mike thought, searching for words, when I first saw you in that bar, you seemed lost, like a man who was in a strange world. I was, Alex answered quietly. And now, Mike continued, you seem to have found yourself. You know, there are people who wear a mask all their lives, and you've taken yours off. Emma nodded. I noticed it a month ago. Do you remember that night when you helped that drunk guy call a taxi? Before, you would have just turned away. Alex remembered that incident. A young guy, obviously from a rich family, was drunk and couldn't even get his phone out. In the past, Alex would have thought, not my problem. But now, you know, he sipped his wine. I've always thought I knew who I was. The heir to the Whitney Hotel's empire, the golden boy who has everything. But it turned out that it was just a role I was playing. And who are you really? Emma asked quietly. Alex was silent for a long time before answering. I'm still trying to figure that out, but you know what? For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid to do it. Mike raised his glass. To finding yourself. They continued to eat dinner, talking about everything. Mike talked about his sister, who dreams of becoming a doctor, and how he works 2 jobs to pay for her education. You know what's the funniest thing? He said. When I worked in that expensive restaurant, the rich customers looked right through me as if I were furniture. And now I realize that many of them are just empty inside. Emma talked about her gallery and the young artists she tries to help. Sometimes people come with money, she said. They buy paintings not because they like them, but because it's fashionable or a promising investment. They don't even really look at the paintings. I was like that, Alex said quietly. I had paintings worth millions in my apartment, but I didn't even remember what they depicted. The evening dragged on slowly and cozily. They talked about their dreams, fears, and hopes. Emma admitted that she was afraid that her gallery would not survive in this cruel business world. Mike talked about his fear of letting his sister down, and Alex, for the first time in a long time, spoke honestly, without masks and embellishments. "Do you know what I'm afraid of the most?" he said. "That when this is all over, I'll go back to being the person I was before." Emma took his hand. "That's impossible. You're not the Alex Whitney you used to be." "She's right," Mike added. "You know, there's a saying, you can't step into the same river twice. You've already changed, my friend, and that's forever." Late in the evening, as they were saying goodbye, Emma suddenly said, "Come back next week again. I'll try to cook ravioli according to my mom's recipe." "I'd love to," Alex smiled. "You know, that was the best evening I've had in months." Walking home, he had no money for a taxi. He thought about how strange life is. He started this experiment to find real friends among the rich and successful. Instead, he found them among ordinary people who live from paycheck to paycheck, but have retained something much more important than money: authenticity. His phone vibrated. A message from his father. "How are you, son?" Alex smiled and wrote, "You know, Dad, for the first time in my life I feel real, and it's a priceless feeling." It was an ordinary Tuesday night at the Old Harbor pub when everything changed. Alex was wiping down his glasses as he listened to Mike talk about his day at the restaurant. And then this customer says, "Oh, Olivia." He suddenly interrupted his story, waving to someone at the entrance. "I haven't seen you for a long time." Alex looked up and saw a girl walking toward the bar. She was wearing a simple white blouse, jeans, and a worn-out backpack. But there was something special about her. Maybe her confident walk, maybe her open smile. "Hi, Mike." She sat down next to me. "I'm sorry it's been so long. The last few weeks have been crazy at the hospital." "Olivia is a pediatrician intern," Mike explained to Alex. "We met when my sister was admitted to the ER with appendicitis. By the way, this is Alex, our new bartender and a good friend of mine." "It's nice to meet you." Olivia extended her hand. "What do you recommend a tired doctor drink after a 12-hour shift?" Alex smiled. "How about my signature non-alcoholic cocktail? I promise it will cheer you up better than any alcohol." Intrigued, she propped her chin on her hand. "Let's try it." While Alex was preparing the drink, he watched her out of the corner of his eye. Olivia did not have the polished perfection of the girls from his past life, but her eyes glowed with some kind of inner warmth, and when she smiled, small wrinkles appeared around them. She took a sip. "This is amazing. What's inside?" "Trade secrets," he winked. "Oh, so you're the kind of bartender who doesn't reveal his secrets." She laughed. Mike watched their conversation with a subtle smile. "I have to run. My sister is waiting with her math homework. See you tomorrow." After he left, Olivia and Alex continued to talk. She talked about her little patients, about difficult cases and small victories. "You know," she said, finishing her cocktail, "the hardest part is when you can't help, when all your knowledge and skills are powerless." Alex nodded. "It must take a lot of courage to face that every day." "And you?" She looked at him. "How did you end up here?" Alex hesitated for a moment. The story of a disillusioned heir playing the role of a simple bartender seemed too implausible. "It's a long story," he replied. "Let's just say I'm looking for myself." "And how are you doing?" "Little by little," he smiled. "At least now I understand better what I don't want." She looked at her watch. Oh my God, it's so late. I have to work the morning shift tomorrow. Maybe, Alex felt his heart speed up. Maybe we can get together sometime. Just coffee or a walk. Olivia thought for a moment. You know, there's this place. They make the best pancakes in town. How about breakfast on Saturday? She wrote her number on a napkin. Text me. When Olivia left, Alex watched her for a long time. Something about her was real, like everything in his new life. The next Saturday, they met at a small coffee shop in Cambridge. Olivia was right. The pancakes were indeed incredible. You know, she said, spreading jam on her pancake, you don't look like a typical bartender. Is that a compliment or an insult? Alex smiled. An observation. There's something different about you, like you came from another world. Alex felt his heart skip a beat. She was too perceptive. Maybe, he answered cautiously. But don't we all come from somewhere? A philosopher bartender, she laughed. That's something new. After breakfast, they went for a walk along the Charles River. The day was sunny but cool. Olivia wrapped herself up in her scarf. Are you cold? Alex asked. A little, she smiled. But you know, sometimes it's worth getting a little cold for the sake of good company. They talked for hours about her dreams of becoming a pediatric oncologist, about books they loved, about places they wanted to visit. And you? She asked. What do you dream about? Alex thought about it. Previously, he would have said about expanding the hotel chain, about new investments. But now, I dream of finding my place, he answered honestly. Not the one that others have assigned me, but my own. Olivia looked at him for a long time. You know, that's the most honest answer I've heard in a long time. When they said goodbye, she suddenly stood on her toes and kissed him lightly on the cheek. Thank you for a wonderful day. On the way home, Alex felt strangely excited. For the first time in a long time, he met a girl who saw him not as the heir to Whitney Hotels, but as a human being, and it was frightening and exciting at the same time. His phone vibrated. A message from Olivia. We had another surgery today. A little girl, 5 years old. Everything went well. For some reason, I wanted to share it with you. Alex looked at the screen for a long time before replying. I'm glad you shared it, and I'm even more glad that everything is okay. Back at his apartment, he sat on the windowsill, looking out at Boston at night. Somewhere out there, in the expensive neighborhoods, his old friends were spending the evening in trendy clubs and restaurants. But for the first time in his life, he didn't regret not being with them. Because sometimes the most valuable things in life have nothing to do with money. Alex never thought he would be back at the Whitney Hotel's headquarters so soon. But when he saw Matthew Parker's name on the list of new employees, he knew he had to check it out for himself. Mr. Whitney, Martha, his father's longtime secretary, greeted him. She was one of the few people who knew about his experiment. Your father warned me about your visit. Alex nodded. How is he? Better. The doctors say the crisis is over. She handed him a security pass. Mr. Parker works on the 15th floor in the marketing department. Dressed in a simple H&M suit, Alex took the elevator. His heart was pounding. He hadn't seen Matthew in 2 months, not since that night at the bar. The marketing department was buzzing like a beehive. Young employees were fussing with papers. Someone was loudly discussing a new advertising campaign. And there, by the large window, stood Matthew, giving instructions to a group of subordinates. No, this doesn't work, he said, sounding irritated. Rewrite everything. And where's my coffee? I asked for it 15 minutes ago. The young intern hurriedly ran to the coffee machine, almost bumping into Alex. I'm sorry, she mumbled. It's okay, he replied, watching her try not to spill the coffee as she carried it to Matthew. What is this? Matthew grimaced as he took a sip. I asked for a double espresso without sugar. This tastes like dung. I'm sorry, Mr. Parker, the the girl blushed. "I'll bring you another one right away." "Don't worry," Alex interjected, coming closer. "I know how to make the perfect coffee." Matthew turned at the voice and froze. His face turned white as chalk. "Hey, Alex?" he stammered. "What are you doing here?" "I was passing by," Alex smiled. "I decided to see how my old friend was doing." Matthew nervously adjusted his tie. I wanted to tell you. I just didn't know how." "About what?" Alex walked over to the coffee maker and started making coffee. "About you getting a job at my father's company? Or the way you treat the employees?" The interns and other employees watched the scene with their mouths agape. No one understood why the new manager was so nervous about a simple bartender. "Look," Matthew lowered his voice, "I know we've had some misunderstandings, but—" Alex finished making coffee and put the cup in front of Matthew. "You call it a misunderstanding to turn your back on a friend when he's in a tough spot?" Matthew looked away. "You've changed and I—" "No," Alex interrupted. "I haven't changed. I just stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't. And you know what? I'm glad that happened. Because now I know the value of true friendship." He turned to the girl intern. "What's your name?" "Lucy," she replied, still shocked. "Lucy, never let anyone humiliate you, even if they are your boss." With that, he headed for the exit. But he stopped at the door. "One more thing, Matthew, you forgot one important thing about coffee." "What is it?" he asked automatically. "The best coffee is the one that is made with respect for others." In the elevator, Alex took a deep breath. His hands were shaking. He took out his phone and texted Olivia. "Can we meet? I have something important to tell you." The answer came almost instantly. "Sure. I'm just finishing my shift. Can we meet at our coffee shop?" An hour later, they were sitting at their favorite table. Olivia listened attentively to his story. "So you—" She was silent. "You're the heir to the Whitney Hotels?" He lowered his head. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. I was afraid—" "Of what?" "That you would look at me differently. That you wouldn't see me, but my bank account." Olivia was silent for a long time, twisting the cup in her hands. "You know, when I first saw you, it wasn't what you looked like or what you were wearing that struck me. It was the way you listen to people, how you help them, the way you smile when you talk about your work at the bar." She looked him in the eye. "I don't care how much money you have, Alex. I care about who you are." Alex felt something inside him finally let go, the fear he had been carrying all these months. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing the real me." That evening, on his way home, he wrote to his father, "Dad, today I realized another important thing. Money can buy a position, but not respect, and it certainly cannot buy love." His father replied almost immediately, "I am proud of you, son. You are learning the most important lessons of life." Alex looked at the city at night. Somewhere out there, on the 15th floor of the Whitney Hotels, Matthew was probably still trying to figure out what had happened, but it didn't matter anymore. The day after the incident in the office, Alex received a message from his father. "We need to talk. Come home." His father's mansion in the suburbs of Boston looked as majestic as ever, but now Alex looked at it with different eyes. He arrived by subway, and the security guard at the entrance almost refused to let him in until Martha confirmed his identity. "Son," Michael Whitney sat in his office, looking better than he had a month ago. "Have a seat." Alex sank into the leather chair. How many times as a child had he sat here, listening to his father preach about the importance of reputation and responsibility? "I heard about your visit to the office," his father began, "and about your conversation with Matthew Parker." "Dad, Let me finish." My father held up his hand. "After your visit, I ordered a review of the marketing department's activities. Do you know what we found?" Alex shook his head. "It turns out that Mr. Parker wasn't just mistreating his employees. He was trying to sign some questionable contracts with advertising agencies, contracts that would have brought him considerable commissions personally. What? Alex straightened up in his chair. Yes. His father took out a folder with documents. He used his new position to make personal connections. And you know what's most interesting? He kept mentioning his close friendship with you. Alex felt everything boiling inside. He used my name? That's right. Oh, I'm Alex Whitney's best friend. We'll work this out as friends. My father imitated Matthew's voice. Sure enough, this morning he received his dismissal order. Silence fell in the office. Birds were singing outside the window, but the sound seemed distant and unreal. You know, son, the father finally said, when I suggested this experiment, I thought you would simply learn to appreciate money, but you learned something much more important. What? To appreciate people, to see their true essence. My father stood up and went to the window. I've been watching you all these months. I've seen you change, how you learn to live without privilege, how you find real friends. Alex remembered Mike, Emma, Olivia, people who accepted him without his last name or status. And you know what? His father continued. I am more proud of you than ever. Even when I work as a bartender? Alex smiled. Especially then. His father smiled too. Speaking of which, I hear you've become one of the best bartenders in the place. I have a good teacher. Alex remembered Tommy, who patiently taught him all the intricacies of the profession. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. A message from Matthew. Are you happy? You've ruined my career. Alex showed the message to his father. Are you going to answer him? He asked. No. Alex blocked the number. Some people will never understand that friendship is not for sale. Leaving his parents' house, he stood for a long time on the path, looking at the mansion. This place had once seemed to him the center of the universe. Now he realized that real life doesn't happen within luxurious walls, but among ordinary people. His phone vibrated again. This time it was Olivia. I finished the surgery. Everything went well. The baby will live. Alex smiled and wrote, Congratulations, you are a real hero. Shall we have dinner together? Of course, but this time I'm buying. Don't argue. On the way to the subway, he received another message. This time it was from Emma. You won't believe it. I sold 3 paintings. I think the gallery will survive. And then from Mike. Buddy, we're playing basketball tonight. Are you coming? Alex answered all the messages and got into the subway car. An elderly woman with heavy bags sat next to him. He helped her carry them to the exit, and she thanked him with a sincerity he had never heard in high society. In the evening, while preparing for his shift at the bar, he received another message from his father. You know, your mother always said that real wealth is not something you can put in a bank. Now I understand what she meant. Alex thought about it. During these months, he had lost some fake friends, but he had gained some real ones. He lost the comfort of a luxurious life, but he found himself. And perhaps that was the most valuable lesson of his life. As he put on his bartender's apron, he thought about the irony of fate. He had to pretend to be poor to find real wealth. Alex nervously walked around his apartment waiting for Olivia. There was an hour left before he was supposed to meet his friends, and he could feel his confidence melting away with every passing minute. Are you sure you're ready? Olivia asked when she arrived. She had just finished her shift at the hospital, but she still looked fresh and composed. What if they don't react as well as you? He stopped at the window. Olivia came over and took his hand. Emma and Mike are good people. They will understand why you did it, just like I did. Alex remembered that night a week ago when he told Olivia the truth. Her shock, then understanding, and finally acceptance. You know, she said, this explains a lot. Your knowledge of wine, your ability to communicate with people, but most importantly, it explains why you understand the value of real relationships so well. Now she stood by his side, ready to support him in his conversation with his other friends. They chose Little Italy restaurant together, simple enough to make everyone feel comfortable, but quiet enough for a serious conversation. Emma was the first to arrive, as usual, wearing jeans with paint stains, direct evidence of her work in the gallery. "Is something wrong?" she asked, noticing the tense faces of Alex and Olivia. "Let's wait for Mike," Alex replied. "I have something important to tell you both." Mike showed up 10 minutes later, still in his waiter's uniform. "Sorry I'm late." He sank into a chair. It had been a crazy day. Alex looked at Olivia, who nodded slightly, encouraging him. "Guys," he began, clutching a glass of water, "I have to tell you something. Something that might change your opinion of me." "Are you a serial killer?" Mike joked. "I wish." Alex smiled weakly. I've been lying to you all this time." He told them everything. About his real background, about the Whitney hotels, about the experiment and its reasons, about his fake friends and how he was looking for real ones. Olivia held his hand under the table, giving him strength. Emma and Mike listened without interrupting, their faces changing from surprise to understanding. "So," Mike finally said, "you are the heir to Whitney Hotels, the same chain where the cheapest room costs as much as my 6-month salary." "Yes," Alex answered quietly. "And you knew?" Emma turned to Olivia. "I found out a week ago," she replied. "And believe me, my reaction was interesting." "I understand if you're angry," Alex said. "I've been lying to you for months." "You fool," Emma interrupted him, and everyone looked at her in surprise. "Do you really think we care how much money your family has?" "But no, listen," she leaned forward. "Do you know why I consider you a friend? Not because you work as a bartender or wear cheap clothes. It's because when I told you about my gallery, about the problems with rent, about young artists, you were the only one who really listened. Not just nodded, but understood." "Emma's right," Mike added. "Remember when you lent Tom money for his daughter's medicine? Or how you helped me with my sister's tutoring? Money doesn't make a person good or bad. It's their actions that do." "I told you," Olivia said softly, squeezing his hand. Alex felt something inside him release, the fear and tension he had been carrying around for the past months. "You know," he said, "when I started this experiment, I thought I was going to learn how to recognize fake friends. Instead, I learned how to be a real friend, and a pretty good bartender," Mike added, trying to lighten the mood. "Although now, I understand why you know so much about expensive wines." Everyone laughed and the tension finally disappeared. The evening went on as usual. They talked, joked, shared news. Emma talked about her new exhibition, Mike about his sister's success, and Olivia about her complicated surgery. Later, as they were leaving the restaurant, Emma suddenly stopped Alex. "You know what's the strangest thing? That you, having everything, decided to start from scratch to find something real. That's impressive." Mike patted him on the shoulder. "And you know what? We're glad you did, because otherwise we would never have gotten to know the real Alex Whitney." On the way home, Alex wrote to his father, "They know, and they accept me for who I am." The answer came almost immediately. "Do you realize now that true wealth is not measured by money?" Alex looked at the city at night. Somewhere there, in their apartments, his friends, his real friends, were returning to their normal lives. Emma was preparing for the exhibition. Mike was helping his sister with her homework. And Olivia was there, holding his hand. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "That sometimes you have to lose everything to find what matters most," he answered, squeezing her hand tighter. And in that moment he knew that all the months of pretending, all the fake friends he had lost, were all worth it to find these people. People who saw the real him and accepted him for who he was. A month has passed since Alex revealed the truth to his friends. Today was his last day at the Old Harbor pub. Tomorrow he would return to his real life, but as a completely different person. "I can't believe you're leaving," Tommy said, wiping down his glasses. "You know, at first I didn't think you'd last a week." Alex smiled. "To be honest, I thought so too." "So what's going to happen now? You're going back to hotel management?" "Yes, but something will change. Over the past week, Alex has developed a new development plan for Whitney Hotels, a plan that included not only the expansion of the chain, but also the creation of an employee support program, scholarships for their children, and health insurance for all employees." The bar door opened and his father, Michael Whitney, walked in. It was the first time in 6 months that he had seen his son as a bartender. "Dad?" Alex was surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see where my son has been for the last 6 months," his father replied, sitting down at the bar. "And maybe try that famous cocktail you told me about." Alex began to prepare the drink as his friends began to walk into the bar. Mike, Emma, Olivia, even Peter, his neighbor from Dorchester. Is this a going-away party?" he guessed. "Not really," Olivia replied with a mysterious smile. "More like a party for a new beginning." Mike raised his glass. "And to Alex Whitney, the best bartender I know and the best friend I could ever ask for." "And to his father," Emma added, "who came up with this crazy experiment." Michael Whitney smiled. "You know, when I came up with this idea, I was only thinking about teaching my son the value of money. But he learned something much more important: to value people," Alex finished. The evening was spent in a warm, friendly atmosphere. Tommy told funny stories about Alex's first days at work. You should have seen him try to open a $10 bottle of wine. Peter recalled their car mechanics lessons, and Emma showed a sketch of a picture she was painting, a portrait of their group in a bar. "By the way," said my father when they were alone, "I have a proposal for you." "What is it?" "I want you to head a new project, a chain of democratic bars under the Whitney brand, places where people will feel at home, regardless of the size of their wallet." Alex looked at his father in surprise. "Really?" "Absolutely. And you know what? I think you have the perfect team to start with." Alex looked around at his friends, Mike with his experience in the restaurant business, Emma with her artistic taste and understanding of atmosphere, Tommy with his years of experience as a bartender. "You know," he said, "this could work." Later that evening, when most of the guests had left, Olivia stayed to help with the cleanup. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" she asked. "A little," he admitted. "Everything will be different." "Not everything," she smiled. "We're still the same people." "You know," Alex said, "when I started this experiment, I thought the hardest part would be living without money, but it turned out that the hardest part was being honest with myself." "How did you manage to do that?" "Thanks to all of you. You showed me what it means to be real." The next morning, Alex stood in front of the mirror in his penthouse. His Tom Ford suit fit perfectly, but something had changed. Maybe his look, maybe his posture. His phone rang. It was Mike. "Hey, rich guy, don't forget about our basketball game on Saturday. And don't think about getting out of it. Money won't save you now." Alex laughed. "I won't forget. By the way, what do you think about my offer?" "To become a manager at the new bar? It sounds good, but with one condition: you have to stand behind the bar sometimes, just so you don't forget your roots." "Okay." Before he left, he received a message from Emma. "My exhibition opens next week. I hope you come as a friend, not as a potential investor." And from Olivia, "Good luck today. Remember, you're the same Alex, just in a better suit." A driver was waiting for him in the lobby, but Alex decided to walk. On the way, he stopped by his old apartment in Dorchester to pick up his last few things. "We're going to miss you, neighbor," said Peter, who was tinkering with his Ford. "But now I know who to call if I ever want to stay in a 5-star hotel." At the Whitney Hotel's headquarters, he was greeted with respect, but without the old sycophancy. Perhaps because he had changed himself, or perhaps because rumors of his experiment had already spread throughout the company. In the evening, he returned to the Old Harbor pub, now as a customer. Tommy put his favorite cocktail in front of him without even asking. "How was your first day?" he asked. "It's weird," Alex replied. "But you know what? Now I know exactly who I am and what I want. And what do you want?" Alex looked at the picture on the wall, the one Emma had taken last week. They were all laughing, real and happy. "To be yourself," he answered, "and never forget that money can't buy the most valuable things in life." Tommy nodded. "It seems you've really learned the most important thing. Congratulations, boy. You've come a long way." And Alex knew it was true. The path from heir to a multi-million-dollar fortune to a simple bartender and back had made him a different man, a better man. And there was a new path ahead, with friends who knew the real him, with a girlfriend who valued his heart, not his wallet, and with the understanding that true wealth is not measured by money, but by the sincerity of relationships.